Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for spending some time with us. Today, I'm very excited to be introducing you to Malissa Long. She is a member of the Upcycled Cloth Collective and also a member of our admin team. So I'm very, very thankful to have her here today and to let her show us a little window into her world. Malissa is running a makerspace, and she's going to tell us more about it. Over to you, Malissa.
Make ICT is a nonprofit in Wichita, Kansas. Before COVID, we had a little over 400 members, and I was on the board of directors. Since COVID has began, we've lost about 100 members, and we have term limits of 3 years. So we had an election, and I'm no longer a board member, but I am still the textile lead. So I run the part of the space over textiles, and I do our communications as well. So all of our Facebook, our social media. What is a maker space? I know a lot of people have that question. We try to think of it as a gym, but for making things. So we have laser cutters, 3D printers, a textile area, which is not common in a lot of maker spaces, screen printing, a wood shop, a metal shop, a ceramic studio, and the place that I'm at right now, unfortunately, I can't get in. We're having technical issues with our key cards because we're still moving in here. That's another thing. COVID slowed down. We bought we were in an 8,700 square foot space. We purchased an old school that's 20,000 square feet. Maybe a little later I can take you around and just show you the outside of the building. And maybe we can look through some of the windows to get an idea of what's going on inside. Oh, I forgot electronics and rapid prototyping. And that's actually why I joined this space, because my son wants to be a robotics engineer. I don't have those technical skills, and I don't know things about electronics or electricity or about that type of engineering. So I joined the space so he could get that knowledge from others. And I've actually had a member sit with him and explain to him what different LEDs are and how they're used. And so it's a great source of information.
That's wonderful. And how are maker spaces typically set up? How do they come to be at all?
Most of the ones in America are either nonprofit, privately owned, are part of a higher education system. So a lot of the universities now have maker spaces tied to the university somehow. There is a conference now for maker spaces, and I've attended the first two. The third one was supposed to be this year and got canceled, and I did the online. But last year when we attended the one in Tennessee, it was in Charlotte, and one of the universities that came to the conference actually has a 2-year degree in makerspace, running a makerspace, and they learn all the tools of a makerspace and how to encourage other people to use the tools. And I thought that was incredible that now you could get a degree in makerspace.
That's amazing. I've been to a makerspace down in Cape Town here in South Africa. And I was fascinated to hear that it was two brothers who discovered that they had so many tools between them. They either had to buy a bigger house to house all of their toys, or they could get an industrial space for much less money that they could shove all their making stuff into and then turn it into something that was useful to others. So
Right.
I think a lot of maker spaces evolve in that kind of organic way sometimes.
Yeah. We were started with a $100,000 grant from the Knight Foundation.
Okay.
Wichita is a Knight city, which this foundation looks at the income levels of the people. We actually have 5 zip codes here that make under $25,000 US dollars a year, which is way below poverty level here. I don't know how that compares to other places, but because of that, they find ways to build the community up so that they can get rid of that income disparity. So with $100,000, we bought most of our major tools. Since then, it's been our goal to spend our members' money wisely. We're probably one of the least expensive maker spaces in the U.S. We charge $25 a month because we do know that the average income of our population is about $42,000, which does not leave a lot of disposable income. If there's a tool that we want to add, we've set up a matching grant now where the space will match donations of members, and it's up to the membership what we get. So people noticed the laser cutter was being used a lot, so several people got together and said, hey, we want another laser cutter. And so the space agreed, we'll put $2,500 towards it, you have to raise the other $2,500. So members donated to the laser fund, is what we called it, and we raised enough money to get a second laser.
Okay, that's amazing. Now, you say that many maker spaces don't have a textile division. Why do you think that is?
Even with our membership, we only have about 20% women and 80% men. I've noticed the Nation of Makers now does a national survey of maker spaces and gives that information back to us. I want to say nationwide that the percentage of women is only 14 to 20%, but I'm not remembering that off the top of my head. So maker spaces are more male-centric than female-centric, but there was enough strong females here that wanted textiles, and we have some the Society of Creative Anachronisms here, which is a group of people who try to preserve cultural realities of 1600s or before, if I'm remembering correctly. So they teach like how they sewed back then and how they created, and then we have a very huge cosplay community here that is very active in making their own items, and so sewing is an intricate part of that. So we've actually had a textile space for almost 5 years now.
Okay.
All of the spaces that we have, someone wanted it and got others interested and created it. Right now, our structure is that we have area leads for these areas. So we have one person that manages each area. We recently put a rule in place that any future areas is run by committee. With committee, you have more people buy in and more likely use of the area. So we don't want to waste any space. So there's people interested in bookbinding. A group of people got together and bought an old press. So we now have an old press, and now if they want to expand that bookbinding area, they have to form a committee with 5 people.
Okay.
So you have to have interest to keep the space.
Do you find that people come in all fired up and then lose interest and fall by the wayside?
Most people that join have known about the space for about 2 years, and their life is so busy they can't find the time to come in and use the space. So it usually takes a member about 2 years to actually take the plunge and get in. Okay.
So do you think that people kind of just their need to earn a living kind of almost gets in the way of the process?
Yeah. We do have a scholarship program where you can do volunteer work and pay $10 a month. And we don't ask for income or anything. We just, you just have to ask for it. But I think a lot of people's pride gets in their way of asking for that help. Or they feel like they don't deserve that membership. And I wish, you need a creative outlet, please use it, So trying to overcome that hurdle of low income people thinking that they're not worthy of that's something we're going to try to figure out a different way and get those people in here.
Mm. Because making is actually a way to kind of become self-employed. So
Exactly.
it would be a great way of kind of closing that poverty gap for people, I think.
Right. There's not a lot of business training for low income here, and there's also no lending institutions for small loans. The smallest lender is the county, which the county excludes the city of Wichita, and the smallest loan they will give is $15,000, and you have to have 20% of that to even get the loan. So there's a lot of barriers to entry to create small business here, and I'm hoping that with some things I've worked with and some things that I see others working with now, that we can get rid of those barriers of entry for small businesses and see small businesses starting to thrive here, and using the makerspace as one way to create those small businesses.
And are you teaching business skills in the center?
We actually, our newest treasurer is an ex-tax attorney, and she has a class called Turning Your Hobby into a Business. I've signed up for it 3 times. All 3 times life has been too busy, and I haven't been able to attend, but we're going to try some online classes, and she's going to teach that online, so I'm hoping to attend when she does that. I've also the art community is really well organized here, and there's a program out of Kansas City called Artist Inc., and 2 years ago they started teaching that program here in Wichita, and I was lucky enough to be included in one of the cohorts. It's a really intensive 6-week program where you get a little bit of business, a little bit of tax planning, collaboration, planning and processes. I really need to start practicing that stuff myself again, and hopefully as every year they add more cohorts, then you'll have more business-minded artists, and we'll start to see that growth in small business as well.
Mm-hmm. I've always believed that the arts are a great way to become self-employed, even though a lot of people say that you don't make money as artists. But it's such a direct route. You take some materials, you make something, you sell it.
Yeah.
It's so uncomplicated. That I think that it's overlooked very often as a way of creating a business.
Right. Well, and I find that people don't think you should make money at something that you love to do, and I think that's so wrong. Happiness is so much a part of who we are. I mean, and art is so much a part of who we are. It shouldn't be detrimental to be happy at what you're doing.
Do you think that's because so many people hate their jobs?
Probably. Company.
Because it's actually something I've tried to uncover in a lot of conversations with people is why do they feel that artists should work for free? And it's kind of this prevailing assumption that seems to be global, but nobody can really give me a really good reason why.
Well, and I think the other thing is that people think, oh, you're an artist, you're born with those talents, you didn't develop them, you didn't cultivate them. Where when a lawyer or a doctor can show a degree on a wall where they paid for it. And it's like, why should you be paid for something that you didn't have to pay for? And I think that's a mental problem with people. If you, I catch myself even saying, oh, I can make that. And I never make it, to talk myself out of buying something. So I think that's part of the mentality too, that, oh, I'll just make it myself instead of buying it from someone else. And we should, should take joy in other people's passion.
Yes. Yes. And after all, even if you make it yourself, it takes you time that you could be spending making money doing something else. So
Right.
so surely that time is worth something to the artist also.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So what sort of arts do you mainly have like prevalent there in your area?
I tried to have a textile group meet every month. It wasn't very successful. I think probably because there's a lot of things going on Sundays and Saturdays here. So I've had some knitting, some crochet, um, tried to do some upcycling. Um, One of probably my most successful things is when I taught how to make aprons out of old men's shirts. A lot of people like that and enjoy that, and even asked me when I'm going to do it again. Um, I've had a lot of fun and interest in surface design, because that kind of can cross over into screen printing. So just a little bit of everything. I kind of say I like to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
I love that. I love that. And what's your own history with textiles? Where does your love of textiles stem from?
My mother and grandmother both sewed. I never have a time that I don't remember having needle and thread in my hand. I got my first sewing machine when I was 8. When I was 9, we had relatives that worked for DoorDash, and they had given away all this fabric to all the employees that they thought wasn't useful to them because it was only 2 or 3 yards, and they can't cut multiples if you only have scrap. They were about to burn what was left in the warehouse, and the employee said, well, what if we have relatives? Can they come and take it? And they're like, well, it keeps us from burning it. And so, yeah, sure. So my mom and my grandmother loaded. I have an aunt that's 4 years older than me. So my aunt, my brother, my sister, and I, my mom and my grandmother in a Ford F-150 with a cab before seatbelt laws, drove 100 miles and filled up our truck with denim, corduroy, scrap, anywhere from 3 to 5 yards. My dad used to own a feed store, so when we got home, we pulled out one of these huge feed scales and weighed all the fabric. There were 6 of us in the front of the truck on the way home. The camper was full. We had over 2 tons, over 4,000 pounds of denim loaded into that truck. And
Wow.
So until I was in high school, my mom and grandmother made all of my clothes. I mean, we rarely went shopping for clothes. I mean, every once in a while, as a treat, we'd get a few t-shirts or something, but never, everything was homemade. And then when I was in high school, my mom and my grandmother both worked for a fashion designer and did contract labor where they brought pieces of her work home and constructed them to be sold in retail stores. So I was naturally always around that. I mean, and I watched my mom take old pants that fit me, take them apart, and make several pairs so that I would have multiple pairs to wear. And she would repurpose things for us, old coats and things. So it's just in my blood, I guess.
It's wonderful that you were brought up steeped in that culture.
Yeah.
Your mom sounds like a really specialized upcycler already.
Yeah. Um,
So you
she
learn from
doesn't.
the best.
Yeah,
Sorry?
she doesn't. How special she is.
Well, she's done a great job of teaching you about upcycling. So you've mentioned that COVID-19 has affected the makerspace. How has it affected you?
Well, first off, we bought the building in September, and our goal was to move at the end of March, beginning of April. But because our lease ended at the end of March, and we had just finished moving everything out of the old makerspace into the new makerspace when the economy and everything was shut down here. Then it was harder to get volunteers in to help unpack things and organize and get set up. And then the city came to us and said, you know, you are a nonprofit, but you don't fall under the classifications of a church or a school. So there are certain upgrades we want you to make to the building before you open.
Okay.
So being that our income has lowered and our volunteer rate has lowered, it's been harder to get those tasks accomplished to get the building back open. So we went back to the city and said, hey, you know, things have happened. Can we get like a partial occupancy so we can start making money again so that we can finish the building and get it reopened? So they have considered letting us get things done, but again, we have to rely on volunteers, and the plumber we had some painting work, so that had to be taken care of first before he could do the volunteer work for us. I believe we're almost finished with those tasks to get half of the building open. The other half of the building, it looks like we're going to actually have to take out another loan to get that work done in a timely manner and hire contractors. So we're working through that process now of getting the drawings we need to hire the contractors and get the loan to finish that half of the building.
Wow. So your challenges have kind of stacked up one on top of another.
Yes.
And what keeps you persevering through all these challenges?
The love of the community. I mean, I moved to Wichita 5 years ago and knew no one here. And the job that brought me here after 6 months ended. And my family had moved here for this job and thought that, you know, this was our future, and, you know, things changed. That this was the most welcoming community and most supportive community, and gave me an outlet and gave me a way to meet people in Wichita. So the makerspace has given me a lot, so I want to give as much back to it as it has personally given me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It sounds as though makerspaces really are a place where reciprocation is real.
Yes, it is very real. I mean, I now know people all over the nation because of my contacts with makerspaces, and we want to think we're unique, but we find that each other has a lot of the same problems, and so we can lean on each other and learn from each other's mistakes.
That's wonderful. And what do you enjoy most about being involved in the makerspace?
I have my own studio at home, but I was cleaning it up the other day and realized I haven't been in there really since 2016. It's the community, and I feed off other people's energy, and I'm sure they feed off my energy. So it's, you go further and you do more when you have other people at your side. And I think that's why this space exists, is because so many people believe in what we're doing here and want it to be successful.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if anybody wants to find your makerspace online, where can they find you?
makeict.org, makeict.org.
Okay, and are you on Facebook also?
Yes, we are. It's Make ICT, just like the website is spelled, MAKEICT.
Okay, and Instagram?
Also at Make ICT.
Okay, okay, so that people can find you across the website, Facebook, and Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And do you have any parting words for makers out there?
find a group of people who are like-minded and build each other up. I mean, that's the only way that I've learned to survive in this world, is having people with common interests who want to see each other succeed.
I think that's such a great message. Thank you for chatting with us today, Melissa. I appreciate it so very much.
Thank you for having me, Melanie, and I enjoyed talking with you.
It's a pleasure.